introduce Dr. Sen when he's going to give us a lecture and also do an explanation of a presentation of Chado. This will be a very special opportunity, or a very special demonstration, because you'll have the best explanation possible. The theme of Dr. Sen's lecture is for our 40th anniversary for Sydney and the 39th anniversary for Brisbane. And we have very fond memories of that time. Dr. Sen has, for the last 63 years and more, been having one common theme: peacefulness, or peace through a bowl of tea. And I'd like to read a statement that he's made when he, as the Grand Master Oyamoto in 2002, became Daisosho, and he handed the reins of the Grand Master to his son, who is now Zabosai. So we have, in the Urasenke world, we have actually two Grand Masters. We have the Great Grand Master, who's supposedly retired, but he still travels around the world. Probably travels about 30 times a year. So I'll read this out to you because I think it's very important for the theme. The ideals underlying the way of tea are known in Japan as wa, kei, sei, jaku. In English, these are harmony, respect, purity and tranquility. Over the past 50 years, keeping in mind that this was said in 2002, I've personally sought to impart the spirit of this way to people worldwide, expressing my goal through the phrase peacefulness through a bowl of tea. I sincerely hope that through this Urasenke Kunichian website, so he's just explaining that there is a website for Urasenke, and if anyone would like to go to it, you will see many of these things. And before I just introduce who the people who are going to be making the tea, Dr. Sen reminded me of a book about my father's professor, this Professor Sadler, and I brought two of the books, not Sadler's book, which we have at home. There are three most important books about tea written in the last 100 years. The first one, as Kurokazu Sensei was trying to remind me, is Okakura Kakuzo, the Book of Tea. And that's a very famous book, written around about turn 1900. The second book, Dr. Sen reminded me, was written by Professor Arthur Lindsay Sadler. And he was an Englishman who was a professor of Japanese Oriental Studies at Sydney University, and he was also a world famous author, and he studied tea at Kunichian when Dr. Sen was 10 years old and studied from his father. And he was, as I said, my father's professor, and also Dr. Ackroyd of Brisbane. The most recent book about tea, which I urge everybody to try and get a copy, is Dr. Sen's Tea Life, Tea Mind. It's the most beautiful book, and whenever I do an explanation, I refer to that book. We're going to have a demonstration, and I'll just introduce who's going to make the tea before I introduce Dr. Sen. The person making the tea is Kurokazu Sensei, and he stayed with us for 3 months in 1973. And he's Hanto, helper. So often on occasions like these you have a helper. And Hanto is Yamamoto, and they're both Gyotei, so they're the highest group of the highest teachers in Urasenke. Then by special request and privilege, we've been given the Australians to be the guests. So Wendy Nagel will be main guest, Wendy Lin will be the second guest, and both of them studied at Midori Kai for a year or 2 years, and Anthony Bryan will be the third guest. So I would now love to get Dr. Sen to say hello to you, and he'll come up onto here. Now, I also would like to mention that Maya Perry, who has been his translator for 13 years, was going to do the interpreting. So please welcome Dr. Sen.
Thank you, Jan. And it is indeed a great pleasure and honor to be here. So as I have a lecture to you about the way of tea. So, and my side is Maya Berry. He's the best at the translators. Then I speaking in Japanese. 今日は大変お忙しい中を、日本国、駐、大使の、秋元大使ご夫妻、またシドニー総領事の小原さん、はじめ、私どもの関係各位、並びに、ディスティンゲストゲストの皆様とお迎えいたしまして、このような催しができますことを大変ありがたく御礼を申し上げます。ありがとうございます。
First of all, I would like to begin by thanking all of our guests, our friends, our distinguished guests for being here today, starting with Ambassador and Mrs. Akimoto from the Japanese Embassy here in Australia, and also Consul General Haro from the Sydney Japanese Consulate, and many, many other friends and friends who have helped Urasenke for many years. I am truly happy to see all of you here. I truly thank you for making time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
私どもはこの同じ地球の中に住まさせていただいておりますけども、本当に私は、空と海が大好きな男でございます。今日はまたこの、海洋国オーストラリアの、海の博物館でこういうような催しをしていただきますということを大変ありがたく存じます。
We, all of us, live together. We share a place called home here on this same planet Earth. I am an individual who happens to love the sky and the ocean. And today I am most delighted, I'm most happy to be able to take time here to spend time with you and to be able to talk and share about the way of tea here in Australia, which is surrounded by the ocean, and here at this wonderful museum, the Maritime Museum of Australia.
オーストラリアと裏千家の関係は本当に古いでございますね。ちょうど私がまだ、6つぐらいの時でございますから、1929ぐらいの時で。
Now the relationship between Australia and my country of Japan goes way back. I believe it started around 1929 when I was just a 6-year-old boy.
一人の外国人がですね、私の父のもとで一生懸命お茶の勉強をして、おられた。後で私が大きくなって伺いましたら、その方は、半年間私の父のもとでお茶の勉強をされていろいろと、筆記をされて、オーストラリアへ帰られた。そしてこのシドニーで、お茶の本をお出しになったんですね。ダクター・サドラーといって本当にブック・オブ・ティー岡倉天心が書きまして、そのブック・オブ・ティーが世界に名を馳せましたと、次にサドラー博士がお茶の本を書いていただきました。
When I was a little boy, this foreigner came to my home in Japan, just this lone single man, gentleman from overseas, came and he studied with my father. He lived in Japan by our home for about 6 months, and he studied everything he could about tea in those 6 months under the tutelage of my father. He took copious notes and he studied very hard, and 6 months later he returned to his home country. Now, at the time I was a young boy, so I did not quite understand the significance, but when I was older, I learned that this gentleman was Dr. Sadler. And he went back to Sydney, where he was originally from, and he wrote a very famous book based on the things he learned about tea. The very first person who became world famous for writing a book about tea was called Okakura Kakuzo, or Okakura Tenshin. His book was called The Book of Tea. This was written about 100 years ago at the time. Very famous book. The second book, which became nearly as equally famous, was the book by Dr. Sadler.
そしてこのシドニーの大学、ブリスベンの大学からですね、その5本をお呼びになった方々が、随分私の家へおいでになって、日本文化を研究するということで、一番のお茶を手に取られました。
Because of Dr. Sadler's book on tea, there were many, many students who read his book when they were studying at the University of Sydney, the University of Brisbane, and they were so taken by this book, by the concept of tea, that many of his students ended up coming to Japan. They came to my home to study tea, and they were very taken by Japanese culture.
そしてその後を受けられた線をここにいらっしゃるマクビッチさん、ご主人のダクター・マクビッチさん、大変このお茶に大きな、興味を持たれましてですね、本当に京都までおいでになっていろいろお勉強になりました。
And because of Dr. Sadler, once again, he had some very studious students who were also interested in tea by the name of Dr. McVitie and Mrs. McVitie. Now, the late Dr. McVitie and Mrs. McVitie, who is here today with us, very much became enamored of tea. They came to visit my home in Kyoto many times to study tea.
マクビッチさんのお屋敷にはお茶室も当然お作りになって、そしてもう本当にいろんな道具をお持ちになってご自身がお稽古をなさって、残念ながらご主人お亡くなりましたけど、その後を受け継いでマダム・マクベツさん、そしてまたご子息ジュニアさんはじめ皆さん、オーストラリアの皆さん方は本当に仲良く一番のお茶を、勉強していただいて、私たち本当に嬉しくありがたく思っております。
Mrs. McVitie's home is very famous. She has a tea room, an authentic Japanese tea room, of course. She gathered many tea implements, tea dogu, and she studied tea for herself. She also has taught tea for many years, and her house is famous for tea lessons. Of course, we were very sad to lose her husband, Dr. McVitie, but Mrs. McVitie has carried on his legacy in her own right. She is a great tea teacher, and she is doing a lot of wonderful work, supported by her son, Mr. Julian, who introduced me earlier. And again, they have done so much for us here in Australia. And I am so happy that because of their hard work, that Australia is getting the benefits of learning about tea and to be able to enjoy a bowl of tea.
小林さんのおかげで私は1987年に、このオーストラリアへ初めて参りました。そしてクイーンズランドの、大学で、5回講義をさせていただきました。
Because of Mrs. McVitie, I was able to visit Australia for the first time in 1973, and at the time I was able to visit Queensland, the university there, over 5 times to give lectures and so on, to teach about tea, and it's because of Mrs. McVitie that I was able to work here to do my tea work.
今日ここで後でデモンストレーションいたしますので、今日のデモンストレーションで出ていただく方は皆、オーストラリアの、方であります。
Today we're doing a tea demonstration for you, so you can see what a typical tea service looks like. And we have asked our students here in Australia to play the roles of the guests.
なんか日本のウェオティー、茶道というと非常に堅苦しくですね、窮屈なように皆さん方、一番にお思いになると思うんですね。
Now, when people first hear the word chado, which we translate as the way of tea, a lot of people tend to think that, oh, it looks so stuffy, it looks very stiff.
でも日本の茶道っていうのはこういうその精神があってこそ日本が今日まで続いてきてるわけでございます。
But it is because we have our spirit, which is infused into our tea. Because we have our Japanese spirit, which is represented by tea, this is why our culture, Japanese culture, has managed to survive to this day.
今からちょうど500年前に私の方の、初代の千の利休、これは織田信長、それから豊臣秀吉、家康、それぞれの、天下の覇権者に、茶道を持って、仕えた人であります。
My ancestor was named Sen Rikyu. He was alive around 500 years ago. He was the original founder of our tea lineage. And when he was alive, it was the time when Japan was going through a very tumultuous history, and there were three main Japanese generals who helped unify the country at the time, very important beings in Japanese history, by the name of Oda Nobunaga, General Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and also General Ieyasu. And my ancestor Sen Rikyu was the tea master for all three of these warlords at the time.
特に秀吉、信長の時代は大変な日本がですね、覇権争いが、ありまして、皆、戦いで明け暮れたわけであります。
Especially during the period of the first warlord that I mentioned, Oda Nobunaga, Japan was still very much at war, domestic war upon war, very tumultuous time in history, conflict after conflict.
その時に利休がですね、一番のお茶を持って、このお茶をお互いに進め合っていただきなさい。そしてそのお茶をいただく次には腰のものを水外す、いわゆる武士の魂という刀をみんな刀掛けにかけて丸をしてみんな一緒にお茶を進め合っていただくということによって心と心が溶け合うんだということを教えたわけであります。
My ancestor, Rikyu, although it was such a tumultuous time and no samurai would be caught without a sword at his side, in that particular context, my ancestor Rikyu would encourage samurai to leave their swords, to take it off of their hips and to hang it on a sword hanger in their sword rack at the front of the tea house and enter the tea room weaponless, to be open-handed. And he encouraged the samurai and the generals to enter this small tea room with no weapons and to share with each other, to share this tea with each other, and to be equals in this tea room.
それでお茶を一緒にいただくときにはもうどんな人でも上下の区別がない。みんな同じ人間、みんな平等なんです。だからたった一碗のお茶でもいかがですか、お先進め合う、その進め合うということによってどんな人間同士でも区別差別なく一体感になれるということをこのお茶室で教えたんですよ。
What my ancestor taught in that period of Japanese history 500 years ago was that this tea room was a place where we could share, to learn to be one with each other. In the tea room, we learn to share tea. We take the bowl of tea and we ask our neighbors, our fellow guests, would you like another bowl? Would you like to go first? And so on. And by remembering to have this sort of hospitality, this sense of consideration for the other, we learn to share. We learn to become one in the tea room. This is what my ancestor taught in that period, which is a very, again, tumultuous, warring period in history in Japan.
どんな方でも神、仏に祈るということをいたしますね。でも大抵は自分のこと、自分の身内のことしかお祈りしませんよ。でもお茶は一旦この茶室に入った以上は全ての人間が平等になって、そしてあらゆる宗教を超えた祈りの世界に入っていくわけです。
Now, most people on this planet today pray to something, whether it's some form of God or higher force. They'll bow to Buddha, to God, and so on. And yet, when push comes to shove, when their back is against the wall, human beings tend to worry only about themselves or their own family, and not much beyond that. In the tea room, what we teach is that we are all equal, that there are no differences, no class differences, no prejudices. We're all the same. And by sharing that bowl of tea in this sacred space, so to speak, it becomes a very wonderful prayer of sorts. It's not a religion, however, it's a very spiritual space that we share.
非常に面白いことはですね、1549年にフランシコ・ザビエが日本にですね、キリシタンを持ってきたわけですね。その時にその フランス教ザブレに一緒についてまいりました、ヨアン・ロドリゲスというそういうその自社がついてきて、それがずっと記録を書いた記録の日本教会史と教会チャーチの、ね、日本教会史というのがこれ今バチカンのライブラリーにあるわけなんでございます。それを見ますと大変驚くべきことが書いてあるんですね。
Now, back in 1549, Francisco Javier, the very world-famous Christian missionary, arrived in Japan to do his missionary work. And at the time, he traveled with a scribe, his personal scribe, or as we say today, secretary, Juan Rodriguez. And his scribe, Juan Rodriguez, took copious notes of everything he saw and he learned in Japan as he traveled with his master, Francis Javier. And those notes were compiled later into a book that was titled The Japan Church Chronicles. And a copy of this book exists in the Vatican Library today. I had a chance to see this book and I was amazed at what I read.
ではちょうど織田信長の終わりの頃から豊臣秀吉の終わる前ぐらいまでの30年間ぐらいがですね、キリスト教を日本で布教できるっていう、期間があったわけなんです。
There was a period in Japanese history before they closed their doors for a long time. There was a 30-year window in the mid-1500s. It was at the end of the reign of Oda Nobunaga and also right on through the reign of the next general, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, about a 30-year window, when Christianity was actually welcome in Japan, when Christian missionaries were able to do their work in Japan for about a 30-year period before they were shut out.
そしてそのジョアン・ドロリゲスだけでなくもう一人フロイスという人がいます。この2人が書いた記録が本当に大きな私たちにですね、視野を与えてくれたんですね。
Now, the very interesting thing is that this scribe that was working with Francisco Javier, Juan Rodriguez, he also had another scribe with him called Florence. So the two of them actually took notes, and they left a very remarkable set of writings for us, for our T lineage.
そのもちろんポルトガル語で全部書いたんですが、たまたまですね、今から30年ほど前に東京大学の岡田っていう博士がそのバチカンにあるライブラリーにございます日本教会史を訳された。その訳されたのを私読んでびっくりしたんですがね、そこにはほとんどお茶のことが書いてあるんです。
Now, this book was originally compiled in Portuguese because that was their language that they spoke. However, about 30 years ago, a very well-known professor, Professor Okada, who is at our best university in Japan called the Tokyo University, he translated the Japan Church Chronicles from Portuguese into Japanese. And I had a chance to read the translation, and I was once again amazed at what he wrote because he had, the original scribes had written so much about tea.
私はクリスチャンではございませんけれども、しかし茶道ということでですね、バチカンへ参りまして、前の法皇様パープさん、もう一つ前のパープさんにもお目にかかってお茶を差し上げて、いろいろそのバチカンのライブラリにありますヨアン・ロドリゲスの日本教会史についていろいろお話しすることができたんです。
Now, I personally am not Christian. However, I have had a chance to serve tea to the past two popes in the Vatican. I have met them personally, had a chance to serve tea to Pope John Paul and the previous pope as well. And because of this experience, I was allowed to see the Vatican Library, and once again I was able to see the original book, the Japan Church Chronicles, which was in Portuguese.
それはその、日本へ行った時にどのようなことをして布教をしたらいいかということがまず書いてあるんですね。でその中にですね、私驚いたのはまず日本へ行ったらその宣教師、要するに宣教師の人たちはみんなお茶の会へ出席しようと。でそのお茶の会って千の利休っていう人がいる。その千の利休っていう人になるべく近づきなさいって書いてあるんですね。
Now, what amazed me about the writings that was contained in this book is that the Japan Church Chronicles, rather, basically described how to become a missionary, how to be a successful missionary in Japan. And what it said in Portuguese was that it recommended all missionaries who wanted to do the work in Japan to go to tea services, to go to the chakai, tea gatherings, as much as possible. And there was this individual named Senrikyu, and to become close to him as much as possible. This is what the book recommended.
そしてその最初にですね、秀吉にですね、やはり謁見を賜って、クリスチャンを布教することを許可を得なきゃいけない。でその許可を得るためにも利休は秀吉の側近であるので、秀吉にそれを謁見をしてもらうように斡旋してもらいたいということを言ってるんですね。
And another thing the Church Chronicles mentioned was that it said you must try to seek an audience, you must try to meet Hideyoshi, who was the leading general at the time. And he said, but in order to meet the general, you must gain an introduction. To get an introduction, you must try to meet with Senrikyu, because Senrikyu is the trusted advisor, trusted inner circle of Hideyoshi. So once again, get to know Senrikyu, and that way you will be able to get an introduction, hopefully, to meet with the general.
そしてそのお茶会へ出たからですね、あらゆる人たちがそのお茶会でそのお茶を楽しんでる。あたかもその場所が茶室とあるんですけど、その茶室がですね、市中の三居っていう言葉を使ったんですね。町の中の三居、いわゆるその町の中にその喧騒な町の中にあるけれども、遮られた一つの聖地のような場所であるというのを町の中、市中の三居という言葉で茶室を表しているわけなんです。
This book also spoke about how they encouraged the missionaries rather to join as many tea gatherings as they could, and it also mentioned the chashitsu, or tea room, tea hut. And what it said about the tea hut was this. It said that the tea hut is very much a sacred or a sanctuary or sacred oasis within the bustling city, and to seek out these tea rooms, tea huts, to join the tea gatherings as much as possible.
そしてたった一杯のお茶だけど、その一杯のお茶があらゆる人をですね引き連れて、みんながそこで仲良くなっている、引きつける、そしてみんなを仲良くする、その一杯のお茶っていうのは実に大事なの。だからこそ宣教師はそこへ行ってお茶をいただきながら、キリスト教のいいこともそこで宣伝布教すればいいということを言ってるんですね。
And this book continues to describe that if you are to join a tea gathering, if you are to go to a tea room, then you will be able to share in a bowl of green tea. And by doing so, the green tea will be able to meet many people, that the tea is a very social place, you can meet many people. It is a place of gathering. This marvelous bowl of tea somehow manages to gather a lot of people together. So by all means, this book encourages the missionaries should join tea gatherings, because this thing called green tea, this bowl of green tea, is so important. And this book also encourages missionaries that by attending tea ceremonies, by attending the tea gatherings, that this will be a great opportunity for them to do their missionary work, that they will be able to promote Christianity at these gatherings.
それでその書いてあるのは、皆さんお茶会に出席して利休に会って、そして利休の斡旋で秀吉に、皆さんをお会いすることができるわけなんですね。
And so, sure enough, the missionaries, when they would go to the tea gatherings and they would meet my ancestors, Senrikyu, then naturally, most of the time, they would be able to get an introduction to Hideyoshi, the general.
でその時に秀吉がキリスト教って一体何だということを利休に聞いたわけなんです。
And at the time, because Hideyoshi was starting to meet these foreigners, these missionaries, Hideyoshi actually asked my ancestor, what is a Christian? What is Christianity?
その時に利休が言った言葉はですね、日本では仏、でも外国では神という、その神がいわゆるキリスト教のいわゆる信仰対象の一つの大きなもの ですから日本もこれからそういう両面のことどもを、知ることによって外国の知識を取り入れなきゃならないということを還元したわけです。後にそれがですね、切腹を命ぜられる一つの原因にもなってしまうんですね。
So when Hideyoshi was very curious about Christianity, and he asked my ancestor about this, what is this thing called Christianity? My ancestor explained to him, he said, well, in Japan, we all pray to our God, which is the Buddha. However, overseas, in foreign countries, they seem to pray to the gods, kami. And so my ancestor advised Hideyoshi, the general, my ancestor advised Hideyoshi that we as Japanese people should learn more about overseas countries to be able to expand our knowledge by learning about different religions and so on. Now, at the time, this advice was meant well. However, unfortunately, because of such advice, later on, my ancestor was forced to commit seppuku, ritual suicide, upon order of Hideyoshi because of his advice.
で後に日本の岡倉天心がボストンで1905年にブック・オブ・ティーを書きます。そのブック・オブ・ティーの中でお茶の心はわび、さびという言葉を使ってますね。
Now, Okakura Tenshin was an author who wrote the Book of Tea, the first definitive book on tea, in 1905. At the time, he was in Boston. And in that book, he talked about wabi-sabi. This is the concept of basically simplicity and rusticity.
でそれはですね、英語で彼が説明しているのは imperfect beauty ということで、不完全の美ということですね。
It's also Japanese aesthetic that Okakura Tenshin likes to describe as imperfect beauty.
恐れ入ったことにはですね、いわゆるフランシスコ・ザービエについてきたヨアン・ロドリゲスが日本教会史の中のお茶というものは不完全か完全かどちらかだということも書いてあるんですね。
And very curiously enough, Francisco Javier's scribe, Juan Rodriguez, also talks about how tea he was not quite sure whether it was a perfect thing or an imperfect thing.
そして我々西洋人はどちらかというと焼き物でも何も完全な姿のものを求めている。でも日本ではお茶室で入ったらお茶碗っていうのは手作りですからいびつなですね凸凹なシンメトリーシンメトリーっていう左右がもう相対でないというそういう非常に面白いことどもが道具の中にでも見られるということがある。
Now, interestingly enough, human beings like we like perfection. We look for things that are quote unquote perfect. However, in the tea room, the objects, the utensils that we use generally tend not to be perfect. Our implements are handmade. And so there's little impurities or imperfections in the things that we tend to create. There's an asymmetry about the tea objects.
例えば我々は完全ないわゆる焼き物その焼き物にたくさん花を生けるっていうね。そしてそれでビューティフル美しい。でも日本のお茶室へ入って知ったことはもういびつな花池にポンと一輪の花が咲したと。もう我々とは全然違う一つの世界だ。
Now, for example, a lot of people think that if they add a lot of color or if they add a lot of flowers into one vase, then that's beautiful. In a sense, sure, that is. However, the Japanese aesthetic is a little different. We have a very simple, rustic aesthetic. For example, if you look at the tea room, we usually have just one, perhaps a single flower in a vase. And it's very simple, very rustic. However, this is our concept of beauty. There's imperfection in our beauty, or beauty in imperfection.
ちょっと今日はたくさん入れすぎなんですよ。
I think that's too many flowers in the vase today.
ちょっと私から見たら楽ない。
I would probably not give a passing mark for those
本
particular
当は
flowers right there.
一輪の花、その一輪の花にスッとお客様みんなが心を奪われる。これが大事なんですね。多くのものを見るよりも 一つのものを見る。そこにいわゆる一つのものの見方っていうものが本当に深遠なる深さを。
The reason is because in tea we have just one, very simple, just one tea usually, one flower, not one flower, one bud. And just that one thing, it's very profound, it becomes very deep, and people are very drawn to that one thing. And so that is usually how we tend to do our flowers, very simple, and just that one thing that helps to keep our focus.
そして利休はですね、そのお茶の精神をなぜお茶をみんながしなければならない、なぜみんながお茶っていうものに寄っていくか、それはこういう精神だということを4つの思いで表す。和、和する、和、敬、敬、敬う、静、清らかである、清らか、静かである、清らかである。そして邪、邪というのは消えていくんじゃなくて、今の腹ごしらえだ。これがさあやるぞっていう、いわゆる人間の一つの腹ごしらえ、信念という。和、敬、静寂、ピース&ハーモニー、そしてリスペクト、そしてピューリティ、ピューリティ。いわゆるそのピューリティっていうのは単に清らかもう難しい意味で起きましたが、浄化するですね、キリスト教の方の意味においてホーリーウォーターでこう自分の身を清める、それと同じような意味を。ジャンプは消えていくんじゃなくて、今日より明日、今から明日、その明日のために今腹ごしらえ。
Rikyu taught tea, and you can encompass his teachings into 4 simple characters in Japanese, and they are wa, kei, sei, jaku. In English, we translate them as wa is peace and harmony, kei is respect, sei is purity or purification, jaku is tranquility. Now, when I mention tranquility, I don't mean the kind of tranquility that's weak or that disappears or that fades away. When I say tranquility, jaku, what we mean by that is that sense of calm, that sense of solidness where you're ready to go, you're ready and prepared for the next day or the next step in front of you. So it's a strength of sorts. And in terms of the purification, we, as you would use holy water to purify things, or you purify yourself in Christianity, in tea, we use the concept of purification as a form of preparation as well.
くしくも100年前にですね、オーストラリアでもサドガさんがその和、敬、静寂というものを綿密に書かれて、哲学的なフィロソフィーの、一つの大きな意味がある。そしてこの和、敬、静寂を一番のお茶によってオーストラリア人であろうが日本人であろうがどんな人でもみんなどんな国の人でもその一番のお茶で一つの心のつながりができていくということを書いていらっしゃいました。
Dr. Sadler also, almost 100 years ago, he wrote this book about tea, about the principles that we teach, wa, kei, sei, jaku, harmony, peace, respect, purity, and tranquility. And what he talked about was that the principles taught in tea are a philosophical teaching of sorts. It is a philosophy of sorts, he wrote in his book. And he said that tea is a tool that can be used to unite all Australians with Japanese and everyone else, that we can all learn to unite because one bowl of tea can help all of us to share our hearts, that we can become one in our hearts and minds through this beverage called tea.
その精神をオーストラリアで現代実行していただいたのがマックリッチさん。
And the person who has been actively living these principles and teaching these principles that Dr. Sadler wrote about is Mrs. McVitie.
私はそういう意味におきまして歴史というものは非常に面白いものだ。
So I truly think that history is a remarkable thing.
いろんなところでいろんなつながりができてくるわけです。
Because of history, we realize that we have so many connections.
例えば利休が今先ほど申しましたキリシタン、そのキリシタンを秀吉に紹介する、そしてキリシタンの宣教師を受け入れる。したがって利休の弟子たちの大名たちがですね、皆キリシタンに改宗するんですね。
Now, the very interesting, speaking of history, is that when my ancestor Senrikyu was teaching tea to Christian missionaries, when he would accept them as students, he would, of course, because they were his students. They would meet other Rikyu students, and many of Rikyu's students at the time were very important lords in their own right. At the day, they were by Christian standards would be like knights, the equivalent of knights in Japan, the lords of a lot of territory, and they would, as a result, they would convert to Christianity.
でしかもその、大名たちがですね、利休を中心にして謀反を起こすだろうと、その謀反を起こすだろうというのは一つの原因なんですね。でそれから、最後まで改宗をしなかった大名は一人だけです。他の大名はみんな改宗したんです。高山右近というその高槻の城主、この人だけが最後まで改宗しなかった大名なんです。
Now, this again, because Rikyu unfortunately had many Christian students, this was also another reason which eventually led to his death, because the general feared that Rikyu or his students may lead a revolt of some sort. So that was the unfortunate side effect of the Christian missionary students. However, another thing that happened was because Rikyu had so many daimyo, or the lord class students, almost all of them save one, almost all of them except for one converted. And the last holdout, so to speak, who refused to convert to Christianity was a daimyo by the name of Takayama Ukon. He was the only one of the daimyo level students of Rikyu's who would not convert.
そしてそのキリシタンの問題があるところへ持ってきて秀吉がですね、隣の朝鮮を侵略するということを言い出しましたのを、また利休が隣国をそういう部で勢力することはやめなさいということを考えた。このですね、2つの問題が絡みまして利休は切腹を命ぜられたわけであります。
Now, compounding this Christianity problem, which had already led Hideyoshi to suspect Rikyu of unsavory dealings, at the time, because Hideyoshi was a very ambitious general, he had unified most of Japan at that point, and he set his eyes on a neighboring country, which was Korea. And so Hideyoshi was wanting to basically invade Korea, which was across the ocean. And because Rikyu was his trusted advisor, Rikyu used his position to try to talk Hideyoshi out of this. He advised Hideyoshi that we should not attack our neighbors, we should not use force, we should not use martial force to attack our neighbors, that was not the right thing to do. So that was another issue. Because of these two issues, the Christianity issue and this, that he advised against the attack of Korea, this eventually led to the downfall of my ancestor, Rikyu, and he was ordered by the general Hideyoshi to commit seppuku or ritual suicide.
そういう記録がバチカンにございましたので、私はヨハネス2世ポープさんに、お茶をさしながらそのお話がいろいろ出まして、まあ言うならば利休さんは、世界を一つのお茶碗で結んだ人ですねということをいただいて、大変私ありがたく思ったわけです。
Now, when I had a chance to visit with Pope John Paul II several years ago, and I was able to offer him a bowl of tea, again, he invited me to look at the Japan Church Chronicles, and we had a chance to speak about these things, and that's when I learned that the Japan Tea Chronicles spoke about my ancestor and explained about tea and so forth. And so I had a chance to talk to the Pope, and so we talked about how green tea, this one bowl of tea, was something that could help unite the world together.
お茶はあくまで相手のお客様に対して自分の心からおもてなしをするっていうことをやるわけでございます。
Tea is a tool or a situation where we are able to give our heart wholeheartedly. We are able to give our utmost consideration, to show our utmost consideration and hospitality toward another person, our guests.
亭主は全てのものを自分で準備します。先ほどちょっとお花をお過ぎて言いましたけど、本当にお客様のためにこの一輪あなたのためにっていうことでその一輪をパッと取ってきて、花は野の花のようにという気持ちでそれを指します。
Now the host of every tea gathering will usually prepare the tea room by themselves, and they will spend a lot of time and put a lot of thought into gathering all of the special tools and the sweets and so forth for that day, for their guests, because they want their guests to have a wonderful experience. Now, earlier I spoke about the flowers, and I mentioned something about that there's probably too many flowers in the vase today. However, that aside, the host has taken a lot of time and selected those flowers for you today because the host wanted to be able to have his guests have a most wonderful experience. So they put a lot of time and thought into every little detail of the tea room.
水の水道の水でジャーじゃなくて、もう本当にいい水を自分が選んで、その水でこのお湯を沸かすわけ。そのために茶香セレモニー、お炭の手前、茶香セレモニーをする。でもその茶香は今日は残念ながら時間がないのでお見せするわけにいきませんけど、あちらにマクリスさんがいろいろ道具を飾っていただきましたので、ご覧いただいたら分かると思います。
Now, for example, in a tea ceremony, tea gathering such as this one, we don't go to the faucet, turn on the faucet, and get water from there, though that may be convenient. We actually go out and select the best possible water because the water is a crucial component in making very good tea. So again, a lot of detail and energy and forethought goes into everything. And because we would like the water temperature to be a perfect temperature, we do something called a charcoal ceremony, the charcoal ceremony before the tea ceremony. Today, unfortunately, in the interest of time, we will not be able to do the charcoal ceremony. However, there is a display out front. Mrs. McVitie has been kind enough to show, to bring a lot of her tools, the tea tools, and they're on display. So I hope that you will take a moment to be able to look at all the tea tools, tea implements that we would normally use so that you can appreciate what they look like.
そしていいその水でいい湯加減、湯の温度を整える。そして自分の作った選んだお菓子でお客様に自分がお茶を立てて差し上げる。いただく方はそれを隣同士に進め合ってそしていただくということなんですね。よくお茶で何回お茶碗を回して飲んだらいいか、ね、そんなこと言うのとHow many rounds did the tea bowl 回すんじゃないんですね。正面を避けて accepted from 正面を避けてのそのためにちょっと回せばいいんです。それもう日本の方から外国人が変なお世話からすると何回でも回してくることをぐるぐる回してらっしゃる。何回回してらっしゃる。これ回すんでしょって回すんじゃないんです。正面を避けていただけばいい。それだけのことなんですよ、皆さん。
Now again, we choose the best water. We try to aim for the best water temperature so that the water boils at a good temperature and so on. We select the sweets, whether they're handmade very carefully or hand-selected. Again, a lot of thought and energy goes into selecting the sweets for the tea gathering. All of this so that we can make the best tea for our guests. And again, we once in the tea room, the guests will share the bowl. They will offer it to one another. Remember to be hospitable and considerate of the other. Now, in tea, one thing that we do is we turn the bowl after we receive the bowl, before we partake of the tea. And we often get asked, how many times should we spin that bowl? And I always tell my students, my audience, it's not about how many times. It's not a bowl spinning contest, as it were. What it is that when the bowl is handed to you, you are facing the front of the bowl, the most beautiful part of the front of the bowl. So we turn it just a couple of turns, just little turns, a couple of times, in order to face it from the side. We want to drink from the side to show our humility. So that is why we turn the bowl. It's not about how many times to turn the bowl. It's just turning it a little on its side, a couple times, so that you're drinking from the side, again, as a show of your humility.
ゆっくりお召し上がってと。このお茶は丸いですね。ね、みんな丸いお茶。
Now please don't gulp the tea really quickly.
これは
Take time to
地
savor it.
球だと思ってください。小
This
さ
tea
な
bowl,
地球。
as you can see, is round. Yes, the round bowl. Please think of this as our planet,
そ
as
して
our.
この中に緑がいっぱいあるんですよ。お茶は緑です。グリーンです。
The tea inside will be a very dark green. This represents the green, the beautiful nature in our planet, in our home.
今大事ですね、エコ。
Eco
ね、
is
グリーン、本当にグリーンなかったらどうします皆さん。
Eco and green are so important now, yes? What would you do if we lost all of the green?
ですからいかに地球でグリーンが大事だっていうことを一応昔から教えたんです。
And T has been teaching this for hundreds of years, that green, that we must be very conscious and careful, we must preserve nature.
私たち地球に住まさせていただいて本当に感謝しなきゃいけない。
We are given the privilege of living here on Earth, on this planet, and we need to be grateful for this privilege.
それを大事にしないとですね、あっちはドドンパチ、こっちドドンパチ、もう本当に地球を潰していきますよ。
When we forget this privilege, then human beings are want to go and fight each other. We shoot each other over here. We go over there and shoot some other people, and so on. And pretty soon there's going to be none of us left.
バンバンバンバンこっち上げてくれるのもいいですけどね、もうゴミだらけになっちゃいます。
And of course, I guess it's okay to use our technology to shoot rockets up in the air. However, eventually we're going to have so much litter and trash and fallout will ruin our own planet.
せめて我々は地球に感謝しましょうよ。
So
感謝して緑の色をじっと見つめて、そしてありがたく正面をよけていただいたら本当にお茶はおいしくちょうです。だから私みたいに長生きできる。本当そうなんです。
Let's remember to take a moment to feel grateful, to be thankful for this planet that we have the privilege of living on. When you are handed that bowl of tea, please take a moment to look into that bowl. It's the microcosm of our planet. That deep green is nature itself. It's symbolic of nature. Please take a moment to appreciate nature. Turn the bowl a little on its side to show your humility, and please enjoy the tea. If you can remember to do this several times, or as often as you can, you will be able to live a long life like me.
後でお茶会があちらでございますから、その時皆さん本当にお菓子だけ食べてこうやって本当にお菓子はいただいていただかなかったらポケットに入れて持って帰ってください。そしてお茶を中の色と一緒になって一体感になってるんです。そしたら心の中がスーッとスーッとします。人間はね、みんなわがままでみんな苦しみを背負って生きてるんです。その苦しみを瞬間でもね、お茶をいただくことによって和やかになる。そうすると心の中がスッと晴れてきます。オーストラリアの空のようにオーストラリアの海のように皆さんそういう気持ちになっていただいたら大変私はありがたいと思います。
Now, after this tea and demonstration, we will have a tea service for you outside in the foyer, or in the room actually. And everyone is welcome. Please stop by for your bowl of tea. And again, you will be served some sweets first and a bowl of tea. In Japanese way of tea, we don't munch on our sweets, drink, munch, drink. We don't do this. How we do this is we eat the sweets first. And the tea comes second, the tea comes later. So if you do not feel like eating your sweets, that's fine. Please put it away and feel free to take it home with you, but the sweets will be served first. So after you eat your sweets, then at that point the tea will be served. When you receive that bowl, again, please take a moment to look into that bowl, into that very deep green. It's the color of nature once again, the color of our beautiful planet. Please remember to take a moment to drink the tea and savor the flavor. And by doing so, I promise you, you will feel a very calm sense of calm and peace in your heart. Everyone on this planet, all human beings, have cares and worries and burdens. There is no one that does not have something that they're carrying on their shoulders. By drinking tea and taking a moment to be thankful for the planet, I promise you, you are going to have a very clear and peaceful moment. You'll be able to enjoy that serenity, even for a moment. And hopefully your heart and your mind will be as clear and as beautiful as the Australian sky and the Australian ocean.
たった一番のお茶ですけども、これを皆さんが理解して少しでもこれを自分のものにしていただいたら皆さん方は本当に平和な安らぎというものをお覚えになるでしょう。これが一番大事な人間の生きる道であるということを私は申し上げたいと思います。
So please remember, if you ever have an opportunity, remember to enjoy, savor a bowl of tea. By doing so, you're going to be able to create little pockets, little moments of peace in your life. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because to get through your life, to get through